It is 7 o'clock. Excuse me. It's the time for the appointed meeting. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call? Well, before we do that, I just want to point out that this meeting is being recorded. We don't have our sign up here, but the meeting is being recorded. So all of you who are present, please be aware that the meeting is being recorded. That being said, can we have a roll call, please?
President Duggar.
Present.
Vice President Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Scholar.
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Darrow.
Present.
Manager Patterson.
Here.
Assistant Lovato.
Here.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. We have a full agenda, so let's try to move through it quickly so that we can get everything taken care of and get everybody out at a decent hour. With that in mind, our first item is a motion for approval of our minutes.
Move that we approve the September 19, 2016 legislative meeting minutes.
Second. Third.
Who's got it?
Art.
All right, Commissioner Williams has it. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Discussion of a date and time for trick or treating.
Right.
You guys get to set that. Traditionally, it has been held on Halloween unless that there was some kind of weird event, weird other thing on the schedule. But I mean, normally it's 6 to 8 on October 31st.
And that's what Swickley's doing and Osborne's doing
I
as well.
think so.
That is what Swickley and Osborne are doing.
Excellent.
Yes, quickly is.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right.
That's mine.
Vice President Jones has it this time. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next on our agenda is a discussion of the Aleppo Township Authority Board opening, and we have one more candidate here today. Why don't we move straight? Would you come on up and?
I'm Paula Tapia. I'm actually originally from California. I moved here 5 years ago. Chevron's management asked me to move out to build Chevron's emergency management program and all of the well sites that we have in Smithfield, Michigan, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. So I spent the last 5 years building that organization in both emergency response and exercises with our DEP, our township supervisors, our counties, our fire, our police. So after 5 years, I retired 9 months ago, and I did not go back to California. I actually fell in love with Pennsylvania. So I have just purchased a home in Swickley Heights Manor. My son has moved out, and we're thoroughly enjoying it. So my background is I have a maritime background and a health, environment, and safety background. I spent 34 and a half years in Chevron, one company in the HES environmental field, and the operations. So I have done offshore operations with the Coast Guard. Where would we be out doing platforms, doing emergency response, throwing boom out, that type of environment offshore globally. Then I moved into the pipeline area and the marketing terminal area. And lastly, here with our natural gas operations. So I learned a lot about this area, about its surroundings, and spent a lot of time with external agencies and learned a lot about Pennsylvania with that opportunity. I bring a lot of experience in forecasting and budgeting. I've done capital projects. I've built and developed and budgeted for the CEO of Chevron's Corporate Crisis Management Center. I have forecasted over 450 Superfund sites annually where we have had CERCLA sites abandoned and would have to forecast the project manager's cost to keep managing that. And annually in my own team of emergency response, I had over 1,800 personnel reporting to me indirectly when I was in emergency response, if we had an incident, I would be responsible for managing that entire budget for my personnel. So I feel I would be a good candidate for this opportunity with my vast experience of not only operations, but my budgeting, my forecasting, my leadership, and my engagement with external agencies, which includes a lot of the fire, police, township, county supervisors. So I welcome the opportunity to be on the board, and thank you for hearing me out. Did you have any questions?
Have any experience specifically with wastewater management?
Yes. So part of the emergency response team with waste and water was a big deal in Chevron. If we had an incident, we would have to deal with what are we going to do with this waste? Where are we going to bring it? Who are we going to hire to deal with that? And also, what are we going to do with all this water? As you well know, we need 10 million gallons of water on a well site to be able to build and sustain our operations. So I do have that, not directly, but indirectly. I've been exposed to that. Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The board, the authority actually meets at the third Tuesday on the month in the middle of the day.
Mhm.
Want to make sure that you're aware of that. Doubly sure, I think we talked about that.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
that's
so
fine.
not a
Yeah.
conflict here.
No.
Okay.
Any other questions? And I wanted to thank Len, who approached me and said, hey, here's this opportunity, because I am doing some volunteer work for the community, and I do love it here, and I want to really engage in that and give, now that I'm retired, back in this area. So, thank you, Len.
You're welcome.
Are there any particular issues that, from talking to Len or from things that you've picked up, that you think are of specific need on the authority, or that you think you would be able to benefit from? I mean, I know that you're not there yet, so you don't know what the issues are, but I mean, have you identified anything where you really think you would contribute?
Yes, I think so. I can't pinpoint exactly, but with even just access to roads.
If there ever come a time when the road needed to be blocked, kind of on the Swickley Heights Drive, the upper Swickley Heights Drive, or there would be no way for the cars to get out. They can walk out, but there'd be no residents to get cars out. And if you see in your packet, you have this map, which shows Vecchio Drive, come in, this is Glen Mitchell over here that you don't see. Then you come up Weber, and then Vecchio is a cul-de-sac road off of Weber.
Wait a minute. Yeah. I got it. Thank you.
And we have always been told, and then this map seems to bear that out, that there is a right-of-way between two houses on Vecchio. Right now, it's just being used as yard, but it's our understanding that it is a road right-of-way that was designed when Vecchio was put in, and that could be an access point for Manor traffic to come out in the case of an emergency. We talked about it with Bill Davis, the fire chief, and he indicated that if it would be beneficial. He thinks it's always good to have a second access out. It would not be opened as a road. It would not be accessible at any time. You couldn't do it because you felt like it would only be in true emergencies. It would be gated or fenced or chained or something so that people couldn't decide to use it as a cut through whenever they felt like it. And it would be not paved, not a permanent access. It could be maybe gravel or something. So it'd be only used in an absolute emergency. So before anything would ever happen, it would be just being brought up for the board to discuss. There are property owners on either side that I believe use this as a yard because it's never been opened. There's solicitor input because I don't know about timelines of how long if this has not been used for a certain length of time. Is it still accessible as this? So it's a lot of things to think about, but bringing it up again to say, do you want to pursue this as an option?
Did Public Works come up with a guesstimate
For what?
price?
I mean, whatever, a couple loads of gravel are and a fence. So,
Because historically, we're going to hear a little bit about this in the next item. The ridge component of Spiffy Heights Manor was blocked from getting out for almost 4 hours when we had the incident a couple of years ago. And that's indicative of the kind of problem that could happen on a larger scale. I think this is an important issue.
Sounds as though it is.
Well, I agree. I think that the incident at the Ridge is
look, I have no idea what the slope is here because I can't see that from this. It does appear like it would be an easier access to get from the edge of these parcels up to Little Hollow. I think it looks like from this map, which is just an aerial, there would be less impact in the manor side. There pretty significant impact to the single family homes right here because this is just the yard in between our houses.
There's actually another area, I don't know the property ownership, but if you were to continue up Spiffy Heights Drive toward the circle
Near the back.
near the back.
That's a private drive that goes up to there.
Goes right onto Weber Road.
So we don't, if it's because it's a private drive, we wouldn't have access to that like we may pending solicitor review of this access point.
But having a discussion with the property owner might be an alternative that we want to look at as opposed to doing something that's going to cause the neighborhood to get all excited.
It's another option.
I don't know that we could make a deal with the private right away, but it's a very short.
It is right there. We know that certain people put their trash right there.
talking about this smoke.
So would you ask
Right.
Bill, et cetera, to consider that also?
Right here.
I will. And then, I think
It's like, it's almost,
a big component of this is the legal conversation.
it's almost even.
So what are the
does it
aspects?
mean for us to do
With
this?
the road there at one time.
I'm unfamiliar with this. Was it open at one point?
I don't believe it's ever been open. So that's
And are they aware of this?
not yet, because I wanted to see,
They've never.
No, they know it's there.
They know it's there.
they know it's there.
Okay. So it's not going to be,
The property owners know it's there?
I know that the property owner on the lower side knows it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know about on the upper side.
They know they know the.
They know
easement.
that this
right of
easement,
way,
this
yeah.
right of way is here. But again, we have
township.
but it's never
Off
been
Vecchio.
used.
It's never been used. It's never been used, and
I have to look into unopened roads and abandoned, but I know you can't adverse possess government property, so we'll look into the abandonment and timing.
right, that's what I mean, just.
Should we authorize that?
But you think this right of way has been around for as long as the houses have been there?
For as long as Vecchio Drive has been there, I believe.
Which would, you wouldn't think the
Yeah, I
houses
mean,
would have gotten
houses
there
come in over
before.
time, right? It wasn't a development, it was just a house at a time.
So in other words, these property owners bought the house knowing of the encumbrance.
I believe so because I got this from the county website and it was drawn I didn't put this in here. All I did with this marker was copy the lines that were on the county website. So it's
Okay.
clearly recorded somehow with this access. I didn't just draw this. I copied the line. So the county seems to think it's there.
Okay.
So I will ask Bill Davis to look at the other site, which is off of Weber, which I know where that is. And then I will start working with the solicitors to determine what rights we would have in both locations.
Mhm.
This approach addresses an issue that might impact the manor, but there's a similar issue with regard to the ridge, which I don't know that there's an actual potential solution to.
I don't know that there is based on the terrain.
Right.
I don't know that there's an alternate way to get out of the ridge if there was another incident somewhere along the upper half of Sewickley Ridge Drive. I just don't know there's another way to do it.
I've always thought that you could, I mean, here again,
Drive through Roy Thompson's pond.
I wish we had a screen here. No, if you went from Swickley Ridge Court, it's a really short little throw to a drive that comes off Merriman Road. And I think, again, that's private, but there's several houses on it. It's not one long drive. That might be Roy Thompson's, right? Up here. That's his pond, right?
Right, that's his pond.
So, which house is his house?
His house.
Okay, so whose house is that house?
Both of those are his property.
Oh, I got you. So this is probably just his private drive then.
Oh, it is his private.
Oh, I got you. Okay. I got you. Well, that's the same
But-
question you were talking about over it might make sense to try to approach him and see if that could be used as a,
But to get to him, there's a very steep drop off.
oh, is there a ravine there?
Yeah.
Well, they don't call it the ridge for nothing, right?
Guess not.
All right, is there any further discussion on this issue? Is there any action for us to take?
Just to,
I'll start working on
Look
the
into it.
questions.
yeah.
Okay. Do we want to put anything on the agenda for next week, or we just want to address this again in a month?
Let's get a report back in a month.
Okay.
Yeah. Week's a little short.
Thank you.
Very good. Discussion of traffic safety in Sewickley Heights Manor and Ridge. So I believe everybody got a copy of the letter that we received. Did everybody get a copy of the letter?
Lawrence here.
Did everybody get a copy of the letter that we received?
Yes.
You want to tell us, is there anything that's not in the letter that you want to tell us? Come on forward. Tell us who you are. Tell us who you are for the record.
Warren Fitzpatrick. I live at 100 Sewickley Ridge Circle. And my house is very close to the roads with the safety problems. George knows that I'm aware of this stuff. When I first moved here, I made a little map and had to cut down 3 or 4 pine trees that were long confused coming out of Broadway. I find it interesting watching drivers come out of Broadway. Ladies with cars don't stop. Kids in the car, truck drivers make a swing, stop, be sure they can see, go out. And so safety on the road, it seems to me that people are breaking the law more and more. Stop signs, they go right through them, and speeding. And I think about that stuff. And we've had these accidents coming down the hill to where the basketball and tennis courts are. It's a downhill with a curve, and there are several serious problems. One coming out of the circle, making a right-hand turn to go up the hill. The bushes are so high, they totally block your view. I pulled out of that road several times, made a right-hand turn, and someone was coming down the hill in my lane. Not good. That's why I suggested the double yellow line on that road. Just keeps people in their lane. It's a serious thing when we had that young woman walking her dog died there. And I watched the kids walking up and down there, and they're all over the place, not paying attention. If possible, the sidewalk would help them. So it's a proven dangerous situation. If you watch in certain instances on country roads, what they do if an intersection like that where they have accidents is they will put up 3 stop signs. And the signs approaching the intersection, 3-way stop. And if everyone stops there, then very few accidents. But that's a big thing. So there are several possible solutions to the problem. I think about safety stuff because I owned an engineering company. And we did offshore safety inspections of industrial equipment, and that sort of thing. And a little bit of safety goes a long way. That's my point.
All right, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming out tonight. So in your letter, you've really made 3 suggestions: the yellow line, cutting back the bushes, and the stop sign, right? Why don't we talk about them sort of in reverse order? Because when we had members of the police department go out and look with respect to the stop sign, correct?
We did.
So why don't you tell us what we heard from them?
We had one of the officers go out and look at all the intersections, and he did, tested and came up to all of the corners that you talked about and looked, and he agreed that some of them, there were some visibility problems at some of them. He agreed that cutting down some of the hedges and the bushes and trimming would help the visibility. There was one suggestion that the pine trees that are along Rockledge as you come down to the stop sign. When you come out of Rockledge and you have to look up, he suggested undercutting them at first to see if you could see underneath them, or then taking them down.
I had 2 taken down there. That was worse.
Yeah. And then I'm just gonna jump to what Tim looked at. He looked at cutting, Tim's one of our public works guys. He came out of your street also and stopped, and he sent me pictures, and it is overgrown there. That is Manor property, but we would be, if we're allowed to, we'd be happy to go ahead and cut some of those back as well. I mean, they could just be removed.
The road right of way probably extends beyond the curb.
Yeah, I called Susan. She thinks it's the right of way that we own it.
But these
But
bushes,
once the road's dedicated.
The right of way on the circle comes within 5 feet of my front door on my side, and all the way up the hill on the little
Right.
bank there on the other side of the road. So the right of way goes right through the water on that pond.
So then we would have the right to go in there.
Yeah.
The right of way, we don't go on there unless there's a need. If your mailbox is in it, that's fine, but it allows us permission to go and cut.
As a matter of fact, when we took those roads, finished taking the roads into public dedication, they came out and cut some branches off some of the pine trees because of visibility issues.
Yeah, so they've
They've been there
He
before.
said that it's totally fine. They'd be glad to go and cut some of those.
Yes.
Also running a yellow line from the top all the way down. The officer did say that can be a little bit of a speed deterrent in that area, because when you come downhill, you naturally kind of go to the middle. But if you have a yellow line, you do have to pay a little more attention to the lane that you're in, and that can reduce some speed. We then talked about, so that's the vegetation and the line. Everyone that we've spoken to said that those are both easily accomplished and can't hurt and hopefully will help. So for stop signs, I had a conversation with the officer about how stop signs are not to be used for speed control. They are to be used for traffic control. And so Chris has looked up some of the rules about the PennDOT rules about when and where you install a stop sign, the kinds of studies that are required. But let me look at the map. I will say that the officer did not recommend a four-way stop down by the tennis court because the roads coming out are offset. It's not a natural four-way. And so the placement, there are two at that intersection, which is not directly an intersection, but sort of. The other two would be so offset that it would be hard to even make eye contact with your fellow driver. So he did not recommend stop signs offset just because it wasn't. Even if you put one coming down Sewickley Ridge where it meets Rockledge, that's high up enough that where coming out of your street, it might not stop because a car might stop there and then start to go. It's high up enough where Rockledge is. So he did not recommend a stop sign at that intersection, but he did say that the vegetation and the lines would be useful.
Wouldn't there also, if it doesn't meet the state code for stop signs, you could, if you put them up, you couldn't enforce them anyway?
Yes, that's one of the things that Chris
Yeah, you
researched.
couldn't use it as a revenue stream. You couldn't enforce at the magistrate the fines you would issue if they're not PennDOT approved. But I've been told it's a practice around here to sometimes put them up even if they're not able to be enforced at the magistrate level. Not necessarily in the whole area.
So it seems like everybody's in agreement with cutting some shrubs back and/or trees and the yellow line.
The police saw no problem with it and said it could only help. And the public works guy said, sure, we can do that.
So can we,
Well, I would say, there's two steps. There's one and there's two, which we can do now without any problem whatsoever. And let's say, wait for some circumstance and some more data. And if that occurs, then we can address the possibility of a stop sign or some other type of safety issue.
do we want to move on this tonight?
Be my guest.
So I move to authorize Public Works to cut all appropriate shrubbery, branches, etc. at the corner of Sewickley Ridge Circle and Sewickley Ridge Drive and Rockledge and Sewickley Ridge Drive. And in addition, to install a yellow lane dividing line from the top of Sewickley Ridge Drive to the intersection of Sewickley Ridge Circle.
When they resurfaced Swift Heights Drive, didn't they put a white line down the center?
Well, they put a yellow one at the top more for the same purpose we're
Right.
doing now.
Just at the top, just at the intersection
Yeah.
of
Right.
Glen Mitchell.
Yeah.
Because people were swinging in there crazy too.
All right,
Second.
thank you. There's a motion and a second. Now I have some discussion. So the line that we're talking about is going to be from Sewickley Heights Drive all the way down Sewickley Ridge Drive to the intersection of Sewickley Ridge Circle. Is there any, well, first of all, how difficult is it to paint a line?
Well, that's a long distance, so
That's
I do have to ask them whether it's their own equipment or whether we have to just get somebody in to do it. I mean, they did the line up at the top of Sewickley Heights Drive themselves, but that was a much shorter distance. So you want to make sure that you're always measuring your equidistant, because you notice Merriman Road, they painted it in one lane's this big and one lane's this big.
Right.
So we want to make sure that it's done.
Yipper.
If it's a hand roller, we just want to make sure it's done properly. So I have to ask them.
I mean, quite frankly, a discussion to my own motion, I had actually thought maybe halfway down is sufficient. I'm not sure we have to start at the top.
Well, that's
Then
interesting.
again,
What the officer say? Does he comment on that?
He didn't, he said it would be fine the whole way down.
okay.
you know, that he felt that did not hurt at all to kind of create lanes.
It's interesting, and I would defer to Commissioner Dare or somebody else that walks out there more often, but I wonder if it doesn't make sense if you're gonna put this line there, especially if you got a long distance already, to extend that line up Swickley Ridge Drive past Rockledge. I mean, in other words, as the hill goes back up, is there an equal problem with wandering cars?
I think you have some drivers coming down Swickley Heights Drive, heading out of
Yeah,
the ridge that cut the bend short. But the visibility there is pretty good.
yeah, okay,
I don't think the line needs to come further down the hill than the sign that says the ridge.
okay.
In addition, if you make a
Okay.
longer one, people will all of a sudden not see it. All of a sudden they're coming down and it's a new line.
Right.
They might react to it.
I mean, hang on one second, please. The biggest issue that I have with this whole intersection, just because it's the way I drive it, is as I'm coming out of Rockledge Drive, I find it difficult to see what's coming down
Mhm.
Swickley Ridge Drive. But
Well, that's why I said
That's why there's
Shrubs and trees.
Shrubs and trees are gonna get cut.
Yeah.
as appropriate.
Yeah.
You're right. If I come out of Rockledge to make a left, it's very hard to see the person coming down from the right.
Yeah.
Actually, they took out one of those trees when we took the road.
They took out one on the lower side of Rockledge as you come out, right by the, closer to the tennis court.
closer to
Right.
tennis
These are the
courts,
ones that are, if you come out of Rockledge and you crane your neck all the way around to look up Swickley Ridge Drive,
yeah, correct.
there are pine trees up on the bend in the hill,
Right.
and from the photo I saw, it would bring them up a little bit.
That's it's in the little triangle that Dick and Diane
Right,
got the the grass for.
right.
No, no.
The no grass.
I would certainly like the recommendation of Public Works and the police,
Mm-hmm.
On what,
On the length of the line?
what to cut.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's it cut? Well, we're gonna leave it up to them, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's
the
your-
motion leaves
like, to their
discretion.
discretion, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Putting those lines on the road is pretty tricky. Where every road goes off, the line is broken, telling the person they can make a turn. If you bring a truck in, a professional, to put this line on, they'll do all of that. And if you bring a truck there, you might as well paint the line all the way up to the court.
Well, I mean, I leave to the discretion of the Public Works Department how to go about implementing this, but I think the question is, what's the length? And I think the answer is to the sign, right?
I mean, when you're coming, I know you have a different issue when you're coming out of Rockledge and when you want to turn left on Swickley Heights Drive. When you're coming down from where I are, you have a very easy sight view of cars coming off of Rockledge. So, you know, you pay attention to what's going on there.
Another interesting point, excuse me. Rockledge. George knows I dug out all the drawings when I was on the landscape committee. Rockledge at that intersection was not put in according to the engineer's drawing. He had the road coming to the left about 10 feet of where it goes in. But it would have taken more fill and landscaping to put it there, and for some reason, the contractor put it where it is.
Well, that makes sense, because that would have been a more even intersection with Swickley Ridge Circle then, right? Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
No, where Rockledge
No, you're
comes into Swickley Ridge Drive.
Right, if it went 10 feet closer to the tennis court.
No, 10 feet away from the tennis court.
Oh, I
So
see,
when you approach the intersection, you can see.
I see.
Yeah, big hillside to deal with for that
They had
intersection.
to do some work to do that.
All right, well, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Do we want to vote on this tonight, or do we want to hold this until Monday?
I see no reason why not voted on tonight.
All right,
It's all fresh in our minds.
everybody understands the motion is to,
To authorize the Public Works Department to cut all appropriate shrubbery, et cetera, at the corner of Sewickley Ridge Circle and Sewickley Ridge Drive and Sewickley Ridge Drive and Rock Ledge, and to install a yellow dividing line from the top of Sewickley Ridge Drive to the intersection of Sewickley Ridge Circle. But is that the length of line, or do you want it stopped shorter than that?
Well, Dan wants to stop a little short. By the time you come,
The church will and the sign are a few feet apart, doesn't matter.
yeah, and we're gonna have two breaks coming down that last part, one to the right, one to the left. So I think it doesn't make any difference. It's 10 feet.
Oh, make it approximately.
We're gonna
Right.
be, wing it, you know, figuring out how we're gonna get it painted, but we'll.
all right,
we'll figure it
Good,
out.
that's good.
okay, any further discussion?
Warren, thank you.
You're welcome.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you, sir. Next, discussion of, presentation by Tim Kelly. I tried to skip you, Tim. Come on up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. Been a while.
All right, before I get started, let me introduce my second in command, Dr. Tobacco. This is Dr. Bob Mitchell.
Before you get started, why don't you start by introducing who you are? Tell us who you are.
My name is Tim Kelly. I live at 205 Trailside Drive. Bob and I are both members of a volunteer organization called Citizens Climate Lobby. We're here tonight to discuss one of the least understood and probably most important threats to our security, climate change and what's been called its evil twin, ocean acidification. To get right into this, I'm trying to talk about this in one like this, like trying to shove an elephant down the garden hose, but here we go. The first thing we have to look at is where we are. The planet has enjoyed a CO2 bandwidth, according to ice core studies, between 180 and 280 parts per million. The Mauna Loa Observatory recently announced that we hit 404 plus right now. We are way outside the normal CO2 bandwidth for this planet. And what we've seen so far is pretty apparent. We have 2015 breaking all records. 2016 is on track to break 2015 as far as hottest years on record. We have stronger storms, we have wildfires, we have stronger drought. The terrestrial effects are very much apparent. What a lot of people don't understand and are aware of is the marine side is even scarier. So right now, the oceans are about 1/3 more acidic than they were in pre-industrial times. Now, what that means is that organisms such as clams, crabs, sea butterflies, oysters, these organisms, coral reefs that require calcium carbonate as part of their life cycle are having a hard time pulling that out of the water, and it's having ill effects on all of it. And it's only projected to get worse. The Australians have basically lost the Great Barrier Reef to both higher sea temperatures and ocean acidification. 93% of the reef bleached as of a month and a half ago. So we're having an issue that definitely needs fixing, and CCL steps into this arena with what it thinks is a viable solution. One of the solutions that most talked about on both sides of the political spectrum is pricing carbon. CCL's come up with a plan called revenue neutral carbon fee and dividend plan, and we'll get into the details of this in Q&A. It basically puts a price on carbon, levels the playing field between fossil fuels and renewables, and awards consumers with a dividend check on a regular basis. So what we're looking at is proposed legislation that is now working its way through Congress. We have 15 Republican sponsors, and we get to 30, it'll open it up to Democrats. We're letting, the Republicans are leading this because it's market-based rather than regulation-based. They like it. We're hoping that we can pass it next year. So getting right down to the ask, if we go right to the end of this, the last 2 pages, some significant entities have passed non-binding resolutions in support of fee and dividend. One is the city of Philadelphia. The other's Lancaster, state of California. What we're looking for from this board, the first ask, is that you grant us a non-binding resolution in favor of carbon fee and dividend. The other thing that you can do as a board is consider installation of solar to run your buildings. You have a perfect situation for solar here. Something that has changed in this area recently is the arrival of Solar City. Solar City is the company you may know is run by Elon Musk. They give consumers the chance to purchase solar, have it installed, and save 25% of their power bill for 25 years with no commitment to take care of the power of the equipment whatsoever. They do not have yet a commercial arm, but someone I know in the organization says that that's coming. So it may be something you want to consider. There are other solar providers out there you may want to work with, but there's probably significant savings, and it would make a great statement as far as its location. You have prominent rooftops here that people would see and say, you know, this looks pretty great. You know, we can take action to help stave off the problem and save ourselves money as well. So I'd like to open it up to Q&A, and let's get down to discussion.
All right, so I mean, I hear 2 different things in your ask, as you say. One is for this resolution.
We're looking for a non-binding resolution in support of carbon fee and dividend on the federal level.
Right. So the resolution that you're asking for is essentially asking this body to support federal legislation.
Correct.
But you need to explain to them, Tim, and I understand a little bit of the fee because John Luff explained this, but I don't know that everybody understands what that means.
All
This
right.
fee, carbon fee.
Okay, what this means is we need.
But wait, I'm sorry. Let me just interrupt because before you answer that, do I understand enough that I don't need to understand? Because
Maybe
we are
you
not
do know what it
we are not imposing the fee. You're saying the federal government. So we're supporting.
Well, that's what this
This
support
policy.
is about, I
Okay.
think.
That's
Well,
right. I'll tell you.
Right now, the way the resolution's written, they're asking for a blank check. It doesn't,
Right, you have to
there's
know
no
what you're,
there's no specificity in what the legislation that we're being asked to support. There's no specificity as to what the fee of the dividend is, so.
Oh, it absolutely
That's
is.
what he-
Absolutely is.
But
It's
not
well
in-
designed.
not
well,
in-
but you
what you
need to
handed
tell
me.
them.
If you look at the 3rd page, It's being worked through Congress now. We think it can pass next year. CCL has made that statement, but we need some extra push to get it across the goal line. That's what we're asking for. We're looking for endorsements from business leaders, faith leaders, and others of that kind, and non-binding resolutions from governments such as the one you have in your hand. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, so that's the first piece of what you talked about.
Correct. There's a region, what we depend on right now is something called the Regional Economic, the REMI report. Regional Economic Modeling Incorporated, a bipartisan economics group in Washington, did an extensive study of this and shows that it creates jobs, it lowers emissions superior to the Green Power Plan, and provides people with the dividend check in order to make up for slightly higher prices in fuel costs.
Okay, so the second piece that you're talking about, and I didn't quite follow this, was solar panels on our roofs? Is that
That's
something?
a suggestion.
To consider, to explore the possibility of going solar.
Okay,
That's a suggestion.
okay, but that's not something you're talking about doing now.
No, not right now. I mean, like I said, I've inquired with someone I know who's in the business. Hopefully Solar City would perform a commercial arm next year and allow you to be able to put solar on your roof with no upfront cost and be able to enjoy 25% less on your power bill for 25 years or however long you wish.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I think it's a bit overzealous to expect us to have read and digested this and like take action tonight.
No, I mean, there's no
It's
need for you to
basically
make action
going to
immediately.
tax fossil fuels, the government,
Okay,
on
so,
carbon emissions, and then they're gonna put it.
Well, it uses the term that there's going to be a net dividend. How is the
Right.
net dividend determined?
Well,
Bob,
they're
have
gonna,
you done some work on that?
and they're
Yeah.
gonna somehow return it
If-
to every,
If the reduction in the fees are going to be offset by an increase in fuel, which is, I think, the last statement you made, where's the net?
So, yeah, at first when you hear this, it sounds like it doesn't do anything, but, so think, any place where, the fuel is extracted, this fee will be imposed. And so, whatever company is doing that work will pay that, and they will pass that along
yes.
to consumers. So, your price for gasoline will go up, your price for, heating your house by gas or oil, bulb will certainly go up. But the idea is that this dividend check will go to every family, with that full amount of money. And so if everybody did exactly the same thing, it would be kind of a wash. But if people are going to react to that, they're going to say, well, gas costs more, so I'm going to get a higher mileage car, or I'm going to, put in solar panels or whatever. And on the
How do you,
Industries.
how do you calculate what the net dividend is?
Yeah.
you're collecting
You do.
a total amount of money, say per year. And all
You're not
that
gonna,
money-
you're not gonna distribute all the money you collect, right?
Yes,
You are, yes.
yes.
It'll be a
That's something that
small
CCL has been
percentage.
adamant about. People have come up with alternative scenarios where some of the money would be split off for research or for some other purpose. But the idea is it goes into the fund and goes back to consumers, period. That's it. A thumbnail sketch would be, as I said, if you have 2 adults, 2 children,
You wanna trust the federal Congress to take money and then give it back in the same amount? You gotta be kidding.
well, let's say this. British Columbia just enacted fee and dividend on their own, and it is enormously popular. Businesses are asking the government to increase the tax because it works.
Where?
British Columbia. I can find you studies on that. That's no problem. I mean, like I said, this is deep, detailed stuff, and we can't handle it all tonight. But if you want to dig into it some more, I've left an extensive compendium of sources in the paper that you have. You're welcome to study that and make a decision later on. But I mean, we're moving ahead with this because there's definitely a need. Even if people are doubtful of the terrestrial side, because it's been run through the denial machine, the marine side is absolutely demonstrable and absolutely needed. We've got to stop this. We've got to shut off the carbon, period.
Is this a
How
global,
does
is this a
this-
global initiative or just here in little United
Well, actually,
States?
we have chapters active in every congressional district, but we also we're spreading across to Europe and Canada.
Mhm.
So, they're getting on board with it, people who,
How about
See
China,
this,
how
like
about
it.
China and India?
China is already, they've already enacted their own form of cap and trade. But they'll get on board with this eventually if it's a question of being able to do business with us.
There was a meeting in, Paris that you may remember at the end of last year where basically all the countries in the world, gathered together and, signed up to reduce their emissions by target amounts.
We're committed to keep the temperature increase under 1.5. We're on track right now to go as high as 3, which
1.5 from where?
1.5 from pre-industrial time,
Pre-industrial time being?
200 or so years ago. 200 or so years ago when the Industrial Revolution occurred. We're already at, 1.38, Bob, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, this year is as Tim said, is setting a new record. You sort of have to look at, 3 or 5 year averages, but in the last year, we had an El Nino that was about as strong as the one in 1998, and it was a lot warmer globally this year than it was back in 1998.
Glenn, you want to say something?
Lynn Kinner, I don't mean to rain on your parade, but here a couple of years ago, we had a solar panel company come into the manor, and we were thinking about maybe using solar to heat the pool water and lighting around. And they looked and examined and everything, and number one was we didn't have enough roof area to put the solar panels on all the buildings we had there, and they were oriented improperly so they wouldn't catch the sun. And in order to get enough power, we could just take care of the lighting, we would have to put solar panels almost the size of the tennis court. And the payback was something like 25 or 30 years.
Well,
We just don't have-
that's
we
no
just-
longer the case.
We just no longer have enough sunshine here.
They
No,
do
No,
it in
you don't have enough
Germany,
sunshine
and
at the
and
office
it's
is the problem because we're
80%
shaded.
solar.
The whole manor is shaded with too much. I would love to have solar. I would call Greg Winks in a heartbeat and say, I want solar on my roof so I can feed my Volt.
No, we don't,
But-
there's no problem with shade down around the offices and stuff. We know there's no trees down there in the shade. But even the company that wanted to sell it wouldn't recommend it because it was not, the payback was too long. We don't have enough sunshine generally here in Western Pennsylvania.
Oh,
It isn't like California. Well, I don't know.
I disagree, Lenny,
It's a
completely.
lot of
Well, they
people.
were
Before Solar
here
City
to
got
sell
here,
panels.
I can
Okay,
show you
okay,
a man
but-
with a house he's got 25 panels on his roof and 40 in his backyard.
But that conversation is premature because that's not even on the agenda for tonight.
Well, let
So
me
let's go
say
back
this,
to-
let me
let's
say
go
this,
back
Matt,
to-
very quickly. Before Solar City got here, there were
No,
700.
no. Let's go back to carbon.
All right.
Anybody have any other questions for Tim concerning the suggestion of a resolution?
I think we need to discuss this.
I need a lot
Dan
more
doesn't
information
think
on what's
we
in
do,
here.
but
All right, in that case, then I
Especially
would suggest you go to the Citizens Climate Lobby website and look up the revenue report. It's complete. It will give you all the information you need about the fees, the impacts, everything you need.
How do you
Solar
spell that?
panels are notoriously inefficient. They
No,
cost more to make.
Not
them
solar
than-
panels,
than-
not
we're
solar
talking
panels.
about solar.
What's he talking?
We're talking about a
Carbon.
resolution concerning
Okay.
carbon fee and dividend.
Spell
All right.
Revenue report, REMI,
Sorry, I'm not.
Regional Economic Modeling Incorporated.
And I take Commissioner Dara's point, and I think that this is, I mean, I don't hear anybody making a motion tonight, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So with the understanding that it's something that we need to read and think about and perhaps ask you back if we have additional questions, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kelly tonight?
Who is the sponsor, the lead sponsor of the legislation that's in Congress?
That's a good question. I don't know of everybody who's on, who's the co-sponsors now. I do know that Chris Gibson from Republican of New York and Carlos Cobello of Florida are both co-sponsors. They have also formed the Climate Solutions Caucus in Congress. So they're working with the other side to come up with solutions to discuss this problem. That's far long overdue, but we're seeing some movement.
I mean, there's not a bill in Congress yet. It has to be introduced by a Republican, committee lead.
I guess I
We
misunderstood.
anticipate
I thought,
that will
I did as well.
happen after
He said-
after
Well, he
the
didn't say, I think he said there were 20 representatives. I didn't know.
15.
15?
15.
I
When we
don't
get to 30, we get to the point of 30, then they'll open it up to the Democrats to sign on.
so is there,
Well, you don't have
is-
a bill,
is there,
It's proposed legislation at this point.
and so your organization has drafted the legislation?
Yes.
Okay, is it published somewhere on a website?
No, wait a minute, Bob. We don't have legislation, we have a proposal.
Yeah, so again, I mean, an actual piece of legislation in Congress has to be introduced through a committee, right? And so we're trying to get to that point.
I'm not in the habit of giving people my credit card, signing a blank check and say, have a good time with it. I mean, if you want us to seriously consider taking action on this, we ought to be able to see the proposed legislation and understand what it is that you're asking us to sign on to.
It is
My comment at the beginning was the resolution that's at the last 2 pages is a blank check. It doesn't identify a specific bill. It doesn't identify specific criteria. It just says we support it. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, like I said, if you want specifics on how the proposal is designed, go to the website, find the Remy report, read through that. That's the basis for everything we've done.
Is the proposal there?
Hmm?
Your proposal is there?
The proposal is, there's a summary of it here that Tim talked about, right? We went through
I have to tell you, I'm an environmental lawyer. I've been that for 35 years. I'm into the detailed nitty-gritty of how things work. And so if you
What
want
if
me,
I was to find you a number of someone in CCL that you could talk to one-on-one?
I want to read it myself.
I'll see if I can find you a copy of what you're looking for. I will drop it off here.
Any other discussion? Any other questions today? Yes, sure.
This is a very interesting thing, and I think it revolves around population. Each of us persons take a gigantic amount of energy to satisfy all our needs. In 2008, the UN said by 2011, the world will have 7 billion people. And that occurred. Now they predict by 2050, 34 years from now, the population will be 9.6 billion, almost a 40% increase from 2011. The more people you have, the more heat you're going to put out. How are you going to stop that? It's a gigantic problem.
But we can get past it. The
So
renewables revolution.
does this legislation tax the methane emissions from livestock?
No, unfortunately, it's based on CO2 and other gases that that are spelled out here in the handout. But methane is being looked at severely. It's already, I remember seeing something on the news about a study that says that they're starting to figure out where they're coming from by chemical footprint. And they're figuring out that it's between 20 and 60% more than previously thought. So it's a work in progress, and it's coming, but methane is definitely an issue.
Well, when you talk about taxing CO, you're talking about CO2, you're talking about taxing the emissions from a power plant that's burning the fuel, not measuring the CO2 at the wellhead when the gas is produced, because you're not putting out CO2, you're putting out methane and related organics.
There's a conversation I could.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can we have one conversation in the room, please?
Are you wanting to know how you know how much CO2 is going to be produced at the beginning? Is that the question?
Well, if you're not looking to tax methane,
Oh, no, it's looking at tax methane as well as CO2, sure. It's any carbon.
That's right, that's true.
Any greenhouse
I
gas.
knew that I was going by the list and that's true. Methane has, if you burn methane, you have a known quantity of CO2 that puts out after combustion. So you take a quantity of methane and run it through a formula and you can come out with how much CO2 you create.
Okay, why don't you give us a chance to read through what you've given us? You're gonna bring some additional information with respect to the actual proposal that is
get
maybe,
it to Gwen, because then she can get it to all of us.
Yeah. and we'll be in touch if we have additional questions.
Fine. Thank you very
All right.
much, folks. for
Thank
saying
you.
that.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it. All right, so on a similar topic, our next discussion is one of Earth Day activity. And I can explain where this comes from because it's my brainchild. There are a couple residents on our street on Rockledge Drive who have for many years gone out on Earth Day and just picked up trash in the ravine that goes off of Rockledge Drive. And what always happens there is that people, and unfortunately I'm responsible for this myself, people put stuff out on trash day and it blows down over Rockledge Drive down into the ravine. So they go out on Earth Day and they collect this stuff. This is the Schmitz and Mark Yeaser and a couple other folks.
Yeah.
And so we had kind of thought it would be nice if we could sort of gel that effort or stand on the shoulders of those giants and do something a little bit more concentrated. And so Gwen and I got to thinking and putting our heads together, and we thought certainly just helping them by way of providing them with garbage bags and picking up that garbage when they take it out so they don't have to be doing that all on their own would be one thing. We talked about perhaps looking at some other areas in the township where we could be doing trash pickup on Earth Day. We talked about perhaps stenciling storm drain intakes, which could tie into our MS4 efforts. And we talked about maybe planting some trees in places, although we recognize that
We're going to cut them down soon.
we're a pretty wooded community.
Yeah.
We have no lack for trees here.
My wife says if you look at the hills around here, it looks like broccoli.
So I don't know that we're really in a place where we need some sort of motion today, except to take the temperature of the board and see if the board is in favor of that. I think we're talking about mostly volunteer work, maybe some financial commitment, again, in terms of trash bags and labor, but nothing
When
crazy.
is Earth Day?
April 22nd.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a while.
Yeah,
We're ways
You
away.
can think about it over your Christmas
Think
vacation.
about it.
Yeah.
We can think about it.
Well, I guess the question is that in an early stage, does anybody have any other thoughts to contribute? Any other projects that they think would be worthwhile or thoughts?
Yeah, I'd have to Google search a little bit. I'm sure there are interesting ones out there.
We'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can continue the conversation
Mm-hmm.
on another day. And Gwen, have I covered that adequately?
That was okay.
Okay. Next is a discussion of Ferndale Townhouse Development Application.
Okay.
We're looking at you, Gwen.
There's nothing before you yet, but Matt had asked that we put this on the agenda to kind of have a procedural conversation about perhaps the board would like a little bit more information or education about the process, and it was presented that perhaps the board doesn't want to just get here's this, vote on it. They want some more education along the way about what it is they're voting on, especially if there's one that has any controversy. just a little more education when a development comes in, rather than just, hey, the planning commission took care of all of it and here's this thing that you need to sign. So if that's the direction the board would like to get a little bit more involved, we can certainly, when a proposal comes in, talk about it more than just the time before you need to vote on approving it.
Well, maybe what should happen is when a proposal comes in, the developer should appear before us for a presentation, just saying this is what I propose to do, still, even before he's done with the planning folks, but just come in and give us some background, and then when we get the package from planning, we'll know what we're getting.
I think that's a great idea. That's
So
a great idea. That's an easy way to accomplish, rather than having what they're proposing filtered through me or the solicitor, because you'll have questions that we can't answer. So if we'd like to kind of make that part of what our procedures are. Formalizing it would be in our zoning ordinance, which could come around the way, but I think probably a developer wouldn't object to coming in and just explaining some stuff. So in this case, I'll give you the quick one that we've talked about it before. There's the development of townhouses up on Ferndale, and they have met most of the requirements under our ordinance. There are a few outstanding things. Several of them are third-party agency requirements, like DEP permits, which there's apparently new case law that says that we can't hold up certain approvals for certain third-party requirements, but we can make sure that the board doesn't approve anything before our own conditions are met.
Yeah, there were some circumstances in the past, and we sort of saw it at the planning commission level, where the engineer says, your plans are great, except you have to meet X, Y, Z, you're not there yet. The board can't approve the plan subject to conditions that haven't yet been met in our zoning ordinance. But in this case, I think they're pretty much there, when or they'll be there in the next week or so.
A little more. So it goes back to a philosophy of approvals with conditions. And that is something where some communities just approve, hey, here's your recommended approval, your recommended approval by the planning commission, here's your approval, subject to this long list of conditions. Well, then it falls down to who's gonna follow up on them, and why is it getting approved? Why can't they just meet the conditions? So there will be circumstances where there might be one or two conditions, but as a philosophy, we've been guided to not just say, hey, you can have your approval with all these conditions still need to be met. Meet them, and then you get your approval, perhaps maybe with a few little tiny details outstanding that are time dependent. So do you agree with that? Is that how you want to proceed? That you don't want things to just keep getting passed through with conditions that would be met after getting plan approval?
Yeah, I'm getting the sense something's going on with this development.
This one, no, this one, they're this close. So there's not any major holdups.
No, there's no major hurdles here.
But it just led to a conversation of how we proceed from the planning commission level to this board. Do you want the planning commission to continue to recommend, do you want them to ask to meet all of the conditions before it comes to you? Or are you okay with them giving a recommendation with conditions? And it's not yes or no, it can be gray.
I'm okay with them giving a recommendation with conditions subject to our ability to essentially say we're not prepared to act on it yet.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue was, just practically speaking, they were fairly minor issues, and the developer didn't want to get held up necessarily for another month if they were able to meet with Ben, our engineer, and fix those issues in a week.
When we approved Minnock, we approved it subject to a developer agreement and a few other conditions.
Mhm.
And it seems to me you're always going to have that sort of
Yeah,
situation.
and I think
Definitely
you're
the
still
developer
allowed
agreement, yes.
to impose conditions. I think the one here was, I don't think they necessarily figured out how the garbage was gonna work and how they would get the garbage truck in, and they needed to sort that out.
And those were tiny, and then in this one in particular, there's the water and water availability is a condition that kind of falls in a gray area between a third party approval, because it is the authority, so that's separate than us. But it's a pretty significant one, so you don't want to give them their full approval pending the fact that they may have to install a whole new water line down a road to get to this development, which seems like a big thing you need to know about your water access before you grant approval to this.
Any
our ordinance-
utility.
And our ordinance says that it needs to provide water, they need to provide proof of water and sewer availability. So that's something that's going on right now. They're trying to get that approval. So that's why I wasn't planning on putting them on the agenda for next week to come to get their full plan approval, because that seems like a large enough component. It's not where the trash is gonna be. That's an easy thing. Large enough component that it doesn't seem, in my opinion, and I think in this both solicitors' opinion, doesn't quite seem ready to reach you yet. That's a hurdle that needs to be answered.
I'd probably phrase it this way: conditions that are pretty assuredly going to be met would be fine. Something that it's not sure how they're going to do it yet, I wouldn't want to have to act.
Yeah, and
on
I think most of the substantive, like, real major conditions get worked out at the planning commission.
They
level.
do, yeah. I mean, planning commission is not in the habit of sending you stuff that is wide open.
But I
They're
guess
not.
my question goes back one step. I mean, with respect to this one, it goes back one step. What has happened to the planning commission? Have they already approved it?
They don't approve anything, they recommend
They
approval.
recommend
Have
us.
they recommended it?
They recommended approval with certain conditions outlined in Ben's letter.
Yeah, there were like 3 or 4, and Ben characterized 3 of them as fairly minor, and I think he said the water was the one that he considered more substantive, which is being worked out with the authority.
So isn't the clock running on us now?
The clock is running on you, the clock
So-
started, go ahead.
So you have 90 days from the next regular meeting of the planning commission. So you have 90 days from the 7th of September, but we received a waiver of all MDC deadlines until January 18th, I believe, of 2017.
So the clock normally starts, we get an application in the middle of the month, whenever we get it, but they have to get it to us 2 months before our planning, or 2 weeks before our planning commission deadline for them to make that meeting. So the clock usually starts the next planning commission meeting after we receive the application. So we received it August 17th, the clock started on September 7th when we had the planning commission meeting. There's 90 days from that until when this board needs to act on it. A lot of times developers, because it's a bigger project, there's a lot more to work out, will grant time extensions, and in this case they did. So there's a time extension all the way through January. So there's no clock here that says you have to act in November or December. It's extended to January. It may well be set by December so that you can have it then. But there does not need to be on the
What happens if we fail to act by the deadline?
deemed approved.
Deemed approval. And you
So
may-
we've really,
yeah, you may want-
we've never had that happen yet. So
I think you want to avoid that.
We're careful with
Yeah, no, I don't want that to happen.
we're careful with that.
You may have like reasonable conditions that you want to impose, and obviously it's the right to have those, it'll just be deemed approved.
So what are you recommending?
I'm recommending that even though the planning commission recommended approval with conditions, that it is not quite ready for me to, normally I can take that and I bring that to you the next week.
We want
And
to
say,
get
"Here
the
you go,
water,
you're ready to go."
We want to get the water.
Normally
Lots
I-
of times, so I agree.
Yeah, and I don't
Right.
think, and I don't think you're suggesting, we weren't suggesting to hold them up until January.
No.
But I do think it's,
We need to get the
Ben,
water
we-
resolved.
we did debate this at the planning commission meeting, whether
It was
they recommended,
Yeah, it was a
even with a few minor things unresolved. And it was decided they wanted to recommend, but I don't think Marley's position is that you guys should be approving it with those unresolved.
I suggest that this be put on the November workshop agenda
Yeah.
for an update on where things stand on those conditions.
and they may well be met by then, so then it would be for the November, to be voted on at the November legislature.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. But just out of curiosity, if it came to this board now, we could deny it, saying that the water is too big of an issue and we're not willing to pass it with
You
the.
could deny it, you could table it, say
We'll wait
Not
till the
ready.
water is resolved.
yes, or you could approve it with conditions.
And I think practically speaking, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but we've always, as like a matter of course, asked for an extension. And I think if it came to, you're gonna get denied because you haven't met this, or you're gonna waive the NBC deadlines for
Right.
60 days, I think most developers would waive that in order to prevent having to start over.
What would be the effect of us denying it now? If we denied it now, and then the condition got satisfied, they would just start the application again?
They would have to start over. If it's denied, then we close the file on this and they would have to start over. So that's not ideal.
You're also sending a bad signal to the people at the water side that they're trying to work with to get the water issue resolved.
Tell me more about that.
Well,
If we deny it,
In what way?
Yeah.
we're assuming they can't resolve it.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
I think it is resolvable. It's just a matter of, I don't think,
it's a matter of money.
it's a matter of money and it's a matter of, it's not going to get resolved by next week. So that's the reason I was suggesting that it not go on the agenda yet, even though the planning commission has passed it to this board. I think they're not gonna meet it yet. So,
with no water, there's no development. So, yeah, it's premature. November.
Well, but let me just speak my mind. I mean, you've got residents, neighbors who have come out and said to us, we hate this development and we want it to go away for any reason at all that we can. And the answer has been, there's no reason for us to deny. We cannot possibly deny this. There's nothing
if
to
it meets
deny.
the ordinance, you can't deny it.
Right, but I'm saying that as of right now, it does not meet the ordinance, correct?
Correct. And so that goes back to the philosophy of
Right.
We think that being a little stricter on the conditions and not just saying, here, you can have 2 pages of conditions is a better practice than just trying to keep the list of conditions small, manageable, because who's gonna track them, that kind of thing. I just feel like if the whole job of the planning commission and the engineer's review is to bring you the tightest
Package possible.
package possible.
Yep.
And so we're just trying to stick with that. So,
And I think coupled with a presentation at the beginning of the process is very helpful. Then we get to see kind of how we feel about the project from the beginning.
Yes, sir.
How much water line is necessary to extend the line up to where they want to put it?
I don't know that there needs to be a line extension. I think it was a capacity issue about the capacity of the size of the line that serves that area because there's a sprinkler requirement
Okay,
because they're
see, The
townhouses.
board hasn't seen these drawings or plans or
Right.
anything yet.
We haven't
so-
seen anything.
Well, their board has, yeah, they
No.
haven't seen anything. So,
So we could give them a good idea whether or not those lines are sufficient.
right. And that process has started and some emails went back and forth between Dave Kirchner and the Voorhees engineer. So it's underway, but it's not decided yet. So the developer may have an expectation that since they received the recommendation for approval, that it's going to be approved this month. And
My impression, because I was at the viewer too, so different, if you differ, let me know. I thought that they understood that it wasn't going to be passed until November. They just didn't want to come back.
to the planning commission again.
The
They were kind
planning
of skipping a
commission.
month. They just,
And
hey,
they-
give us
they
the
were
recommendation so we
acknowledging-
can just move
They
to
were
it.
acknowledging amongst themselves that they wouldn't be able to get the outside agency approval. So I don't think they thought it was a big deal. They just didn't want to have their engineer come back, pay him to come to a meeting for an hour whenever they were dealing with it outside.
So basically now Ben, our engineer and their engineer will talk, but it won't necessarily, because the planning commission recommended approval, the result isn't gonna go back to the planning commission. It's gonna just come back to you.
There's also the extension of the deadline. I mean, I think there's something implied in the extension of the deadline that we're not just gonna arbitrarily say no because there's some local opposition to it.
No, I'm not bringing up a denial at all. That's not kind of what I'm talking about.
Well, I am.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Matt raised that as what if?
I just want to, I don't understand enough. Everybody has to educate me because I don't really understand what our options are. And all I know is that there's,
If they meet all the zoning and other code requirements, we have no choice but to approve.
And I think you're really discussing the problem that we were trying to articulate last month whenever you recommend a plan that isn't quite there yet, which is what happened. Because you're right, if it was on the agenda next week, you could deny it because it's not quite there yet. But it seems that it's going to be there. And then I mean, it's probably just, I mean, obviously the board's decision, but I don't think you necessarily want to be in the habit of kicking them back, making them jump through hoops if it's ultimately going to be approved, because you don't know how they're going to react, litigation, et cetera.
Well, that's my question. I mean, maybe you can't answer that. Maybe you can't tell me in open session what our litigative risk is. But I guess procedurally, I don't understand if we,
Difference between a ministerial act by a governing body and a discretionary act by a governing body. This is ministerial.
okay,
We,
okay. So I'm not correct that we could deny this. We could use this as a technicality to deny it, to make our,
you could do it. You're not likely to win in a court battle.
okay. Okay.
November.
At the earliest.
All right. Next on our agenda is a discussion of the SWOT analysis, which we are going to table until some night when we're not running so late. Which
Room to breathe.
brings us to unfinished business. Anybody have any unfinished business?
Pensions continuing.
Continuing.
Thank you.
Anybody have any new business?
I just had one thing to let you know. Masonic applied for and received a demolition permit for what's colloquially known as the Vish House, which is that house with the wooden siding that's kind of shaped in a V. So I called and said, hey, why? What are your plans? And they said, Eric said that they'd had a water main break or a water break in the basement that damaged the house. And rather than spend the money to repair it, it's not going to be a part of their long range plan. So they're just going to knock the house down. There are no development plans at this time. They're just grade the land. So
Do you know how quickly that's going to happen?
I don't.
Does the permit give them a period that it has to happen in?
If it does, it's very long. So
I didn't quite catch that.
Masonic owns a house over here.
I want the one that told them to get an architect to approve all the details they wanted to because of safety to the kids.
The one that they were thinking of turning into a
Yeah.
daycare. Right. Well, they're going to knock that house down.
Okay.
So they're not going to use it for anything. They're just going to tear it down.
Okay, anything else on that?
Not on that.
Commissioner Scott?
Masonic on Wednesday at 7 p.m. is doing a Meet the Candidates night, just an FYI. So, Rod and Lenny are part of the Republican group, and myself have put together the House Representatives and the PA Senate. Starts at 7 o'clock. Everybody's welcome to come.
Will there be cookies?
And I'm in charge of the cookies.
You'll get a crowd.
I do the cookies and they're doing the punch and.
Excellent.
Cool.
Citizen participation.
Oh.
What?
New business real
Oh,
quick.
I'm sorry.
Budget time, Gwen?
Yes, it is. We'll be
So
meeting. I'll
for
be,
everybody to know, it's
yes,
budget
we'll be
time.
working on it. I'll have drafts prepared for the
Good.
finance committee and then it'll come to you
Good.
with a formal draft.
Any other new business? All right, citizen participation. I think you've all participated, but here's your opportunity to do it again. Once, twice,
Said everything.
sold. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion,
Second.
we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.